Hello, welcome back. I'm Andreas, your tech-curious web designer. In this video, we will deploy the real-time chat application to a web server. I will be using Render for this. This deployment is very similar to a normal Django deployment. We just add Redis as the message broker and use Daphne in the start command to run the application. We will also look into a few errors you might encounter. But before we dive in, a quick shout out to my new supporter on Patreon. A big hug to Christian. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Okay, and now let's get started. First, follow the steps in my Django deploy tutorial. You find a link in the description below, until you have set up the Postgres database. And I will see you back here in 20 seconds. Alright, welcome back. So we have created our environment variables, added the static and media file configurations, created a Postgres database on the web server, set up the database configurations, and added the database URL to the env file. And we're ready now for migration. We switch to the production environment and run python manage.py migrate. This is creating now the tables in my remote database on Render. Then I create a super user. And then I start the server with python manage.py run server. Okay, let's check out the website. At localhost :8000. I log in with the admin user. However, we get here now a page not found 404 error. And this is happening because the application can't find the chat group object the WebSocket tries to connect to, because it doesn't exist yet in the database. So let's add the object now. We go to our admin interface, then the chat groups, add a new chat group, the name is public-chat, and save. And I also add the online status group, to which every user on the website is connected to as well. Okay, let's test the website again. And as we see, it is working now. Yes, the message appeared, slowly, but because we're connected here to the remote database. Once the website is online, this is not an issue anymore. Let's also test to submit a file. And the image shows up as well. Alright, the database is working. Next, let's add email so we can send confirmation emails to users. We could see here some error messages in the terminal. It takes the WebSocket too long to shut down the connection and was killed. Also, this should not be a problem on the live side, once we have Redis as the message broker working. So I add now my email configurations. So in the settings file, at the moment we're still using the console as our email backend. I change this now to SMTP and add the Gmail configurations. So I'm using Gmail as my email client here. If you want to know how to set it up, check out my email setup tutorial. We need an email as a host and a host password, which we're going to generate on Gmail. Then we have the email port. We have TLS is true. Then we display here real-time chat as the sender name. And remove the subject prefix Django adds by default. Okay, save this file. Now let's add the email and password to the environment variables. And then we run again the server and test the email. So I go here to settings. Then I click on verify. This has sent me now a confirmation email to my email address. Let's check it out. Okay, I have received this confirmation email here. As we can see, it has the correct sender name we have specified. However, we want to change the greeting to hello from our website, not localhost. We can change that by adding the Django sites framework. So I'm going to my settings file, to the installed apps. And here I'm adding the Django contrib.sites. And then we also have to add the site ID of 1. Alright, save this file. Now we have to run python manage.py migrate. But we got an error here. And this has to do with the social account. So in this project we have the social account app from AllAuth already installed. However, this app requires the sites framework to be installed beforehand. So to resolve this problem, we need to disable the social accounts app, and then we can migrate the sites framework. So if you don't going to set up social logins for the website, we could just delete this app and it would work. However, we will see how we can solve this problem and also keep the social accounts. For this, we comment out a line in the migrations file, which tries to connect to the sites framework. The migration files for the AllAuth tables are in the VNV folder, to lib for libraries, to AllAuth, here is the social account, here we have the migrations folder, then we open up the very first migration file, and here we go to line 126. So this line here prevents the sites framework to be installed. Let's comment it out, save the file. We also have to comment out the social account app. Now we make the migrations. Okay. So it looks like make migrations was not necessary to run for the sites app. However, this created a migration file for our chat group table now. This has to do with the dynamic creation of the group name. We will look into that in a second. But first, let's run python manage.py migrate. And as we can see, this worked now, and it migrated the sites table to the database. Now we can uncomment the social account app again. And also uncomment this line. Try to run here the make migrations command again. This should create a new migration file for the social accounts. If not, we will come back to this issue later. Alright, let's spin up the server and let's have a look at the admin interface. Here we have the sites table now. I can change now the domain name. I add here my domain. This is just a dummy name for now. And also display name. Okay, let's verify our email again. And as we see, it is reflected now in the email. Alright, Now let's sort out the chat group name migration. In our chat folder, to models. So the problem lies with this default value for the name, which is generated automatically by the Shortuuid function. And this is also happening every time we create a migration file. Instead of calling this function straight in the property, a better solution is to override the save method and generate a name only when a new object is created. For this, we delete the default attribute here, and we add blank is true. This means this field can be left empty in a form. And with this code, I override the save method. So what is it saying here? If we have no group name, create a group name using the uuid function. And with the super function, we can override the save method in the parent class. Alright, save this file. Now let's run again python manage.py make migrations. And migrate. Alright, this is now sorted. It could be that you still encounter this problem on the website when you're logged out. The issue here is still with the Socialaccount app. It should have generated a new migration file and add the Sites app as a dependency. But for some reason, this migration file was not created. So let's create one manually. So in the migrations folder, I add a new file. Important here is that it starts with the sequential number, so in my case it is 0007. And this is the migration code I'm adding here, and should you need this code, you can take it from my GitHub repository. This code adds the Sites app as a dependency and a many-to-many field to the social app model. Okay, let's save this file and run python manage.py migrate. Okay, then we run the server again and check the site. Let's refresh the page. And as we can see, the error is resolved now. Great. Let's log in. And now the app is working. So next, let's add Redis. I go to the channels layer configuration in the settings.py file. In development, I'm using the in-memory channel layer, and let's add Redis for my channel layer in production. So I'm adding a condition. If in development, I'm using this backend, else I'm using Redis. Okay, save this file. We also have to install the Redis package so Django can communicate with it. With pip install channels-redis. And now we add the Redis URL variable in the env file. Okay, let's create this Redis database on render now. So add new, then Redis, give it a name, select the closest region. Then I'm choosing here the free tier. In this tier, Redis only comes as a message broker. That's what we need. But it cannot be used as a database because data will not be persistent. For that, you would need to upgrade. Okay, then create Redis. Then we copy the internal Redis URL and add it to our environment variable. Alright. So with that, we are all set to push our code to a GitHub repository now. But first I apply all the migration we did also to the local development environment. So in the settings file, I switch back to development, run python manage.py make migrations. But as we see, we encounter the same issue with our local SQLite database, and we need to install the Sites app before the Social Accounts app. So I will repeat the steps again. I comment out the Social Account app, and also this line. Then I make the migration again, and migrate. Now I can uncomment this line again. Also this, and migrate again. Okay. Next I update my requirements.txt file with all my project dependencies, with pip freeze the greater than sign requirements.txt. Then before I connect to GitHub, I create a gitignore file in the root of the project. I have here this file already, and let's update it. I add here the migrations folder, then also the PyCache folder, so I ignore the whole folder, not just the files, so we can get rid of the last line here. Then importantly, we add the env file. And for Mac users, I also add the ds_store file. Alright, that's it. Let's save this file and let's connect to GitHub now. To do this, we have the option to use git commands straight in the terminal, or, and this is my preferred way, is to use GitHub Desktop. You can download this tool for free. Here in GitHub Desktop, we connect first to our GitHub account in the settings. Then we add existing repository. Here we choose the path to our folder. Then we click the link here to create repository. And then we press publish. This will create now also a repository on GitHub. Then once we have the repository on GitHub, we can make a connection to the web server. Click here on New Web Service. Then I connect here to my GitHub repository. Can give it a name. Our runtime is Python 3. The application is built from the requirements.txt file. And here in the start command, we have to add now our Daphne start command. So Daphne, we installed Daphne already in our project. Then pointing to the ASCII application in our core folder, bind to 000 that allows all connections, and add the port variable the platform defines. Okay, then we select the free tier. And lastly, we add the environment variables. Here the value for environment we change to production. The secret key was cut off. We need to copy and paste it again. However, it is a good practice to create a new secret key for the production environment. So for this, I'm opening the Python shell. So Python manage.py shell. And here I'm writing from django.core.management.utils import the getRandomSecretKey function. Then we call this function and print it out. Okay, here we have the secret key. We copy the string and add it in here. Okay, and then we create a web service. Alright, this is starting to deploy now. However, we can click the cancel button because we still need to add the domain to our settings.py file. I copy the domain from here, go to our settings file, in the allowed hosts, we add the domain here, so just the domain without HTTPS. And then I'm also adding the CSRF trusted origins variable. And here I'm writing the whole URL. Alright, save this file. If you're deploying on render, we are good to go now. But for some web servers, where we don't define the start command on the platform, we might need to create a proc file. So we create this proc file in the root. And add the start command in here. And we also might need a runtime.txt file for the Python version. Again in the root. And add here the Python version. Okay, but as mentioned, I don't need them on render, so I remove them again. Alright, before we push the code again to GitHub, let's update the requirements.txt file. So I exit here the shell with exit and brackets, then run pip freeze. And for good measure, also the collect static command. Alright, and now let's deploy. Commit to main and push origin. A new deployment started. Let's wait for the completion.
5 minutes later.
Alright, the deployment looks successful. Let's check it out. Okay, this is a good sign. We have the login page here. Let's sign in. And the chat is working as well. Nice. Awesome. We successfully deployed now a real-time chat application to our web server. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Happy coding, my friends, and ciao ciao for now.